Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Fractures. Vincent Reynolds stood at the edge of his meticulously landscaped backyard, admiring the sunset while nursing a glass of bourbon. The sprawling property, a testament to his 20 years of work as a military intelligence officer turned private security consultant, stretched before him like a kingdom. At 52, Vincent had built a life most would envy. A beautiful home in Northern Virginia, 2 children in college, and respect in both government and private sectors. The sound of laughter drifted through the evening air. Vincent turned to see his wife, Dominique, sitting on the patio with her phone pressed to her ear, her face illuminated by something more than just the setting sun. Vincent had seen that expression before, not directed at him for years, but he recognized it nonetheless. The intimate smile, the hushed tones, the way her fingers twirled her dark hair. "I should go. He's standing right there," Dominique whispered, ending the call abruptly when she noticed Vincent watching. "Just Marissa from book club," she explained, sliding the phone into her pocket. Vincent nodded, his face betraying nothing. Marissa from book club. The same excuse for the past 3 months. The same lie that had worn thin weeks ago when Vincent had first noticed the signs. Late nights, new clothes, renewed interest in fitness, and the distinctive scent of unfamiliar cologne that sometimes lingered on her clothes. Their 25-year marriage had weathered many storms, his long deployments, the stress of raising their children, Noah and Sophia, and the challenge of reinventing himself in civilian life. But this was different. Vincent knew the landscape of deception better than most. His career had been built on identifying falsehoods and extracting truths. Noah called, Vincent said, changing the subject. He's excited about bringing his new girlfriend to the family reunion next month. "Oh, that's wonderful," Dominique replied, her interest seemingly genuine. Their son, now 22 and in his final year of university, had always been closer to his mother. Did he mention if Sophia would make it? Vincent shook his head. "Still in Europe with her research team. Says she'll try, but it's not looking promising." Their daughter, 24 and brilliant, had inherited Vincent's analytical mind and Dominique's determination. Currently pursuing her doctorate in infectious disease research, Sophia had always been daddy's girl, observant, perceptive, and fiercely loyal. That night, as Dominique slept beside him, Vincent lay awake, mentally compiling the evidence he'd gathered over recent weeks. The text messages he'd seen reflected on their bedroom window while she texted in the bathroom. The credit card statements showing lunch charges for 2 at hotels where no business meetings were scheduled. The GPS history on her car that didn't match her stories. Vincent had never intended to spy on his wife, but 20 years in intelligence had made certain habits second nature. Observation, pattern recognition, threat assessment. He knew who the man was. Preston Harlow, 48, recently divorced, a pharmaceutical sales executive who had met Dominique at a charity gala 6 months ago. Preston with his Italian suits and Mediterranean yacht photos on social media. Preston who had never served his country or known true sacrifice. Preston who now enjoyed the fruits of Vincent's labor. Vincent Reynolds closed his eyes, not in defeat but in calculation. There would be no confrontation, no desperate pleas or marriage counseling. That wasn't his way. Instead, as he had done countless times in his career, Vincent began constructing a mental blueprint, meticulously detailed and precisely timed. Only this blueprint wasn't for a military operation or security protocol. It was for something much more personal. Chapter 2. Confirmation. The week-long family reunion at Lake Anna was a tradition established by Vincent's parents decades ago, bringing together the extended Reynolds family each summer. This year, it coincided perfectly with Vincent's plans. The lakeside resort hummed with activity as family members from across the country converged, renting cabins clustered around the main lodge. Vincent had deliberately secured 3 cabins, one for himself and Dominique, one for Noah and his girlfriend, and a third that ostensibly remained empty, awaiting Sophia's potential arrival. Vincent watched from the deck of the main lodge as Preston's silver BMW pulled into the resort's parking area. Right on schedule. Dominique had claimed she needed a drive separately due to errands on the way. The reunion provided the perfect cover. Her lover could easily blend in among distant relatives and family friends. Vincent, how long has it been? Preston approached with practiced confidence, extending his hand as though they were old acquaintances rather than strategic introductions orchestrated by Dominique over the past few months. Preston, good to see you, Vincent replied with calculated warmth, shaking the man's hand firmly. Dominique mentioned you might stop by. Wouldn't miss it, Preston smiled, his perfect veneers gleaming in the sunlight. Your family reunions are legendary, according to her. Vincent nodded. 27 years running. My father started the tradition before he passed. Preston's eyes darted around, clearly searching for Dominique. Beautiful place. I can see why you keep coming back. Family is everything, Vincent replied, voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath his composed exterior. The day progressed with forced pleasantries, Vincent maintaining his role as gracious host while observing every interaction between his wife and her lover. Their attempts at discretion were almost insulting in their transparency. Brief touches when passing drinks, knowing glances across the picnic area, and synchronized bathroom breaks that lasted suspiciously long. By evening, most family members had gathered around a massive bonfire on the beach. Vincent stood apart, nursing a whiskey when Noah approached, his girlfriend Tessa lingering behind. Dad, can we talk? Noah asked, his expression serious beyond his years. Of course, son. Noah guided them away from the crowd. I know about Mom and Preston. Vincent said nothing, watching his son's face carefully. She told me a few weeks ago, Noah continued. She said you two haven't really been married in any real way for years. Just going through the motions. Vincent took a measured sip of his whiskey. And you believe that? I've seen how you are, Dad. Always distant, always working. Mom says you checked out of the marriage years ago. Noah's voice hardened. Preston actually listens to her. He makes her happy. Vincent absorbed the blow without flinching. I see. I wanted you to know that I know. And that it's okay if you guys split up. People grow apart. Noah shifted uncomfortably. Preston's actually pretty cool. He's already offered to help me get an internship at his company. Vincent nodded slowly. That's generous of him. Yeah, well, Noah shrugged, looking away. He's a better father anyway. The word struck like precision artillery, but Vincent merely checked his watch. I appreciate your honesty, Noah. Excuse me for a moment. Vincent walked toward the dock where Dominique stood with Preston, their silhouettes outlined against the moonlit lake. As he approached, he overheard their laughter. 15 years wasted on that loser, Dominique chuckled, leaning into Preston's embrace. He doesn't even suspect a thing. Vincent cleared his throat, and they jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Vincent, I didn't see you there, Dominique stammered, her face flushing. Clearly, Vincent replied coolly. He checked his watch again. I'm heading back to our cabin. Don't wait up. As he turned to leave, Preston called after him. Hey, Vincent, no hard feelings, right? These things happen. Vincent paused, then simply nodded and walked away, ignoring the muffled laughter that resumed behind him. Instead of returning to the cabin, he walked to his SUV and drove away from the resort, his phone already connecting to a secure call. Is everything in place? He asked when the call connected. Yes, sir, replied the voice on the other end. All systems are ready. Activation on your command. Good. Execute at 0600 hours. No deviations. Vincent ended the call and continued driving, his face illuminated by the dashboard lights. Not in anguish, but in cold, calculated anticipation. Chapter 3. Genesis. The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when Vincent returned to the resort. He parked his SUV and walked deliberately toward the main lodge, where early risers were already gathering for coffee. He had just poured himself a cup when his phone vibrated with a news alert. At precisely the same moment, other phones throughout the lodge began chiming and buzzing as the same alert reached them. Vincent watched impassively as people's expressions morphed from sleepy indifference to shock. "Oh my God," gasped an elderly aunt, staring at her screen. "Preston Harlow is a terrorist?" "What?" someone else exclaimed, gathering around her phone. Vincent sipped his coffee and observed as the news spread like wildfire through the gathering. Headlines screamed across every screen. "Breaking! Pharmaceutical executive Preston Harlow linked to bioweapon development. Top secret documents reveal Harlow Pharmaceuticals tested illegal compounds on unwitting patients. FBI raids Harlow residence and corporate headquarters." Accompanying the headlines were photos of Preston being led away in handcuffs from a location that, to the untrained eye, appeared recent. In reality, Vincent knew these were carefully doctored images created by former colleagues still indebted to him. Dominique burst into the lodge, her face ashen. "Have you seen the news? This can't be real." Vincent regarded her calmly. "Shocking, isn't it? But it's impossible. I know Preston. He wouldn't." She stopped abruptly, realizing her mistake. "Know him well, do you?" Vincent asked, his voice eerily gentle. Before she could respond, federal agents flooded into the lodge, their FBI jackets unmistakable. Leading them was Special Agent Derek Walsh, a man who owed his career and his life to Vincent after a classified operation in Kandahar 12 years earlier. "Preston Harlow?" Walsh called out, scanning the room. All eyes turned to the entrance where Preston stood frozen, having just arrived from his cabin. His face drained of color as he registered the agents and the situation unfolding. "Preston Harlow, you're under arrest for conspiracy against the United States, illegal weapons development, and treason," Walsh announced, advancing toward him. "This is insane. I've done nothing wrong." Preston protested as agents surrounded him. "Vincent, tell them this is a mistake." Vincent merely sipped his coffee, watching as Preston's gaze shifted from pleading to dawning comprehension. "You," Preston whispered. "You did this." Vincent remained silent as the agents handcuffed Preston and began reading him his rights. "How could you?" Dominique hissed at Vincent, her eyes wild with panic. "What have you done?" "Me?" Vincent replied softly. "I've simply been a dedicated civil servant all my life. I report threats when I see them." He nodded toward Agent Walsh, who was now approaching Dominique. "Mrs. Reynolds? We have some questions about your relationship with Mr. Harlow," Walsh stated professionally. "We've discovered numerous communications between you suggesting you may have been aware of his activities." "That's ridiculous. I knew nothing about any of this." Dominique protested. "The evidence suggests otherwise," Walsh replied. "We'll need you to come with us for questioning." As agents escorted both Dominique and Preston out, Noah pushed through the crowd, his expression a mixture of confusion and betrayal. "Dad, what the hell is happening?" he demanded. Vincent placed his coffee cup down carefully. "It appears your mother and her boyfriend have been involved in something very dangerous, Noah. I'm as shocked as you are. This is bullshit. You did something, didn't you?" Noah accused, his voice cracking. Vincent met his son's gaze steadily. "I've spent my life protecting this country from threats. Son, that's all I've ever done." As Noah stormed off, Vincent's phone vibrated with a text from Sophia. Phase 1 complete. Arriving tonight for Phase 2. "Well done, Dad." Vincent allowed himself the briefest smile before composing his features into an appropriate mask of concern and confusion. Around him, the family chaos provided perfect cover as he slipped away to prepare for what would come next. This was merely the beginning. Chapter 4: Revelations. 3 days after the arrests, Vincent sat across from Noah in a quiet corner of a Washington, D.C. cafe. The young man looked haggard, his eyes shadowed from sleepless nights spent watching his mother and Preston being vilified across every news outlet in the country. "The evidence is fabricated," Noah stated flatly, pushing away his untouched coffee. "I've spoken to Mom's lawyer. They can't find any actual links between Preston's company and these supposed bioweapons." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "That's good news, then. If they're innocent, the truth will come out." "Cut the crap, Dad," Noah snapped. "You're behind this. I don't know how, but this has your fingerprints all over it." Vincent studied his son, recognizing the intelligence that had always made Noah exceptional. Why would I do something like that? Revenge, Noah replied without hesitation. Mom cheated on you, so you're destroying her life and Preston's. It's sick. An interesting theory, Vincent conceded. But consider this. If I had the power to orchestrate something of this magnitude, what does that tell you about the man you've dismissed as a loser who was checked out of his marriage? Noah fell silent, confusion crossing his features. Did your mother ever tell you what I actually did during those years I was distant and always working? Vincent asked quietly. Government security consultant. Noah answered automatically. Vincent smiled thinly. A convenient title. Tell me, what do you know about Preston beyond his sales job and his yacht? He's successful. He cares about Mom. Did you know he was investigated 3 years ago for selling pharmaceutical secrets to foreign entities? Vincent interrupted, sliding a file across the table. That his company has been quietly acquiring small biotech firms specializing in weaponized pathogens. Noah stared at the file, but didn't touch it. If that's true, why wasn't he arrested before? Powerful friends. Money in the right pockets. Vincent shrugged. The system isn't perfect. So what are you saying? That Mom accidentally fell in love with an actual criminal. Vincent leaned forward. I'm saying perhaps I was absent from family dinners because I was protecting our country from people exactly like Preston Harlow. And perhaps your mother's infidelity simply provided the motivation to look more closely at a man I already had concerns about. Noah's hands trembled slightly as he finally opened the file, scanning documents bearing authentic government seals and classifications. This doesn't justify framing them, he insisted, but with less conviction. I haven't framed anyone, Noah. I simply provided intelligence to the appropriate authorities. Vincent's voice remained calm. The question you should be asking is not why I would do this, but why your mother chose a man like Preston in the first place. Noah looked up sharply. What does that mean? Did you know your mother met Preston 3 years ago, not 6 months ago as she claimed? Vincent produced another document, a surveillance photo dated well before Dominique's supposed first meeting with Preston, or that she's visited his private account in the Cayman Islands twice in the past year. She wouldn't. Noah stammered. The internship he offered you? Vincent continued relentlessly. The position reports directly to a research division currently under investigation by 3 separate agencies. Noah pushed back from the table, his face pale. I don't believe you. You don't have to, Vincent replied, gathering the documents. But you might want to reconsider who the villain is in this story. As Noah stormed out of the cafe, Vincent's phone rang. The caller ID showed Sophia. He's struggling with it, Vincent reported when he answered. As expected, Sophia replied. The Swiss account transfers are complete. Are you sure about the next step? It's extreme, even for them. They chose their path, Vincent stated, his voice hardening. And Noah made his choice clear at the reunion. He's just a kid, Dad. He didn't understand. He's 22, Sophia, old enough to publicly declare another man a better father while knowing what her mother was doing. Vincent's tone brooked no argument. Actions have consequences. After ending the call, Vincent walked to his car where Derek Walsh waited. The federal charges won't stick, Walsh warned without preamble. My superiors are already questioning the evidence. They don't need to stick, Vincent replied, sliding into the passenger seat. They just needed to exist long enough to trigger the international attention. Walsh nodded grimly. Interpol has issued their own warrants based on European distribution channels linked to Harlow. That's beyond my jurisdiction and my help. I never expected the American charges to be the end of it, Vincent assured him. Just the beginning. How's the surveillance on Noah? In place. He's angry, confused. Made 3 calls to your wife's attorney after leaving you. Walsh hesitated. Are you sure about bringing him into this? He's your son. Vincent stared out the window at the Capitol dome gleaming in the distance. My son died at that reunion when he chose them over the truth. What remains is a pawn in a larger game. Walsh shook his head slightly, but said nothing more as they drove toward Vincent's next appointment, with a Russian intelligence officer who had requested this meeting through old back channels. The game was expanding precisely as Vincent had designed it to. Chapter 5. Acceleration. The exclusive private club in Georgetown provided perfect cover for Vincent's meeting with Alexei Petrov, a mid-level SVR officer operating under diplomatic cover at the Russian embassy. They sat in a wood-paneled alcove, classical music masking their conversation from potential eavesdroppers. "Your wife and her lover have created quite the international incident," Alexei remarked, sipping his vodka. "Moscow is particularly interested in the Novichok derivative formulas allegedly found on Harlow's servers." "Imagine that," Vincent replied neutrally. Alexei smiled thinly. "We both know those formulas were planted. The question is, by whom? You or someone using you? Does it matter? The evidence exists, and multiple intelligence agencies are now investigating connections that weren't on their radar before. It matters to those of us trying to determine if this is personal revenge or something more geopolitically motivated." Alexei studied Vincent carefully. "Your daughter's research in Europe, so close to our Ukrainian operations, has not gone unnoticed." Vincent's expression didn't change, though internally he noted that Sophia's cover was holding perfectly. "My daughter is a medical researcher, nothing more." "Of course," Alexei conceded with obvious disbelief. "Just as you're merely a retired security consultant. Tell me, does Noah understand the role he's playing in your chess match?" The mention of his son's name from the Russian's lips sent a cold surge through Vincent, though he betrayed nothing. "I wasn't aware he was playing any role." "No." Alexei produced a phone showing surveillance photos. Noah entering the Russian consulate in Boston 2 hours earlier. "It seems he's shopping quite an interesting story to anyone who'll listen. Claims his father has fabricated evidence against his mother and her lover. Wants help proving it." Vincent absorbed this information with practiced calm. The desperate actions of a confused young man. "Perhaps," Alexei agreed. "Or the opening moves of a counterplay you didn't anticipate. We're considering hearing him out." "I wouldn't recommend that," Vincent said softly, the subtle threat hanging in the air between them. Alexei chuckled. "Always the protective father, despite everything. Don't worry, Vincent. We didn't let him in. But others might, the Chinese perhaps, or the Iranians. Your son is broadcasting his willingness to provide information on a decorated American intelligence operative in exchange for help exonerating his mother. That makes him valuable. And dangerous," Vincent added. "Indeed." Alexei finished his drink. "Dominique has been moved to a secure facility pending additional questioning. Diplomatic pressure from 3 countries has escalated her case beyond standard channels." This was news to Vincent. "Which countries?" "Germany, France, and surprisingly, Japan. All places where Harlow Pharmaceuticals has subsidiaries currently under inspection." Alexei stood to leave. "Whatever game you're playing, Vincent, it has expanded beyond your control. That's usually when mistakes happen." After Alexei departed, Vincent sat alone, processing this development. Noah's betrayal cut deeper than expected, but it also presented an opportunity to accelerate the timetable. Vincent placed a call to a secure line. "Change of plans. Activate Protocol Judas immediately." Across town, Sophia Reynolds received the message while monitoring communications from a safe house established weeks earlier. Unlike her brother, Sophia had never been fooled by her mother's facade. Growing up watching Dominique manipulate her father had forged Sophia's unwavering loyalty and her willingness to participate in Vincent's intricate revenge plan. Sophia initiated a sequence of encrypted commands that would trigger digital tripwires planted throughout Dominique's and Preston's digital lives. Within hours, every dark secret they had tried to bury would begin surfacing in carefully orchestrated revelations. Meanwhile, Noah paced his hotel room, furious after being turned away from the Russian consulate. His phone rang, a blocked number. "Hello," he answered cautiously. "Noah Reynolds?" An accented voice inquired. "This is a friend. I understand you're looking for help regarding your mother's situation." "Who is this?" "Someone who shares your concern about the evidence against Preston Harlow and Dominique Reynolds. Perhaps we could meet?" Noah hesitated only briefly before agreeing to the meeting, unaware that the call originated from a team operating under Vincent's direct control. The trap was set. That evening, as news broke of additional evidence linking Preston to biological weapons research in North Korea, Vincent sat in his study reviewing the final stages of his plan. On his desk lay photographs, not of Dominique or Preston, but of his children. Noah, as a boy, looking up at Vincent with adoration. Sophia, graduating with honors. A family that once seemed perfect. For a brief moment, Vincent allowed himself to feel the weight of what was being lost in his pursuit of justice. Then he thought of the family reunion, of the public humiliation, of 15 years being dismissed as wasted on a loser, and his resolve hardened once more. By tomorrow, there would be no turning back for any of them. Chapter 6: Escalation. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Baltimore had once housed medical supplies, an ironic setting for Noah's meeting with a mysterious contact who had promised evidence exonerating his mother. He arrived early, scanning the cavernous space with growing unease. "Hello." His voice echoed through the emptiness. "Is anyone here?" Footsteps sounded behind him. Noah turned to see a man emerge from the shadows, mid-30s, military bearing, carrying a leather briefcase. "Mr. Reynolds," the man greeted him. "Thank you for coming. You said you have information about my mother's case," Noah prompted, keeping his distance. "Indeed." The man placed the briefcase on a dusty countertop. "But first, I need to understand why you believe your father fabricated evidence." Noah hesitated. "Because I know my father. He's calculating, cold. He found out my mom was having an affair, and instead of confronting it like a normal person, he did this." "Interesting." The man nodded thoughtfully. "And you believe your father possesses the capability to frame two innocent people so thoroughly that multiple intelligence agencies are involved?" "He worked in government intelligence for decades," Noah replied. "He has connections." "Impressive for a man you described to others as a loser," the man observed, his tone hardening slightly. Noah froze, the implication sinking in. "Wait, who are you really?" The warehouse lights suddenly blazed to full brightness, revealing a dozen operatives in tactical gear positioned throughout the space. Among them stood Sophia, her expression grim as she approached her brother. "Hello, Noah," she said quietly. "Sophia? What the hell is going on?" Noah demanded, panic rising in his voice. "Education," she replied simply. "You've spent years believing Mom's version of reality. Now you get to see the truth." The man with the briefcase opened it to reveal a sophisticated computer setup. With a few keystrokes, the warehouse walls illuminated with projected images, surveillance photos, documents, and video footage. "Preston Harlow," the man began, gesturing to the displays. "Former Naval Intelligence officer dishonorably discharged in 2007 for selling classified information. Reinvented himself in the pharmaceutical industry using contacts from his military days." "That's not." Noah started to protest. "Your mother met Preston in 2020 during a classified operation your father was leading in Vienna," Sophia continued, advancing the displays to show dated photographs of Dominique and Preston at a gala. "She was there as Dad's cover. Preston was there representing interests that directly opposed American security." Noah shook his head in disbelief. "Mom isn't a spy. She's an interior designer." "Mom is whatever she needs to be," Sophia corrected him. "Interior designer. Loving wife. Spy. Did you never wonder how her small design firm could afford her lifestyle? How she always seemed to travel to the same cities where Dad had operations?" The displays changed to financial records, showing millions flowing through accounts in Dominique's name. "Your mother has been selling information from Dad's operations for years," Sophia stated flatly. "At first to fund her lifestyle, later because she developed ideological sympathies with Preston's employers." "This is insane," Noah whispered, backing away. "Dad put you up to this. This is all part of his revenge." "Is this revenge too?" The man activated a final display showing Noah himself, meeting with Preston at his company headquarters months before the family reunion. "You were being recruited, Noah, not for an internship, but as an asset, leveraging your resentment toward your father to gain access to his knowledge." Noah stared at the footage in horror, recognizing the meeting but seeing it through an entirely different lens. "I didn't know." I thought it was just about an internship. You didn't want to know? Sophia corrected him. You were so eager to believe Dad was the villain that you never questioned why Preston Harlow, a pharmaceutical executive you barely knew, would take such interest in a college student with no experience in his field. Noah sank onto a nearby crate, his world collapsing around him. Where's Dad now? Completing what he started, Sophia answered. The question is, which side are you on, Noah? Because after tonight, there's no middle ground left. Across the city, Vincent sat opposite Dominique in a sterile interview room within a federal detention facility. She looked haggard, her designer clothes exchanged for a standard-issue jumpsuit, her makeup-free face showing everyone her 50 years. I always knew you were vindictive, Vincent, but this? Dominique gestured at their surroundings. Treason charges? International warrants? All because I fell in love with someone else. Is that what you think this is about? Vincent asked mildly. What else? You couldn't stand being left, so you fabricated this fantasy that Preston and I are criminals. She leaned forward, dropping her voice. The lawyers say none of it will stick. You've overplayed your hand. Vincent smiled slightly. Did Preston ever tell you about his time in Belgrade? Or his special arrangement with the North Korean pharmaceutical program? Dominique's expression flickered briefly. More lies. Perhaps, Vincent conceded, but effective ones, judging by how quickly international agencies became involved. Tell me, do you remember a vacation we took to Lake Geneva in 2016? You insisted on that specific hotel, the one with the private boat launch. The color drained from Dominique's face. That was years ago. Indeed, during an operation tracking biological agents moving through Switzerland. Curious timing for you to suddenly desire a Swiss vacation, especially at a hotel where 3 known arms dealers were staying. Vincent tilted his head. I've overlooked so many coincidences over the years, Dominique. So many strange alignments between your social calendar and sensitive operations. You're delusional, she whispered, but without conviction. The affairs I could have forgiven, Vincent continued, as if she hadn't spoken. The disrespect, even the poisoning of Noah against me. But selling out your country? Endangering operations that cost good people their lives. His voice remained steady even as his eyes hardened. That's unforgivable. I want my lawyer, Dominique demanded, standing abruptly. By all means, Vincent agreed, also rising. Though you might want to wait until tomorrow. Tonight, Interpol is executing search warrants on 17 properties connected to you and Preston across 9 countries. Whatever they find will significantly impact your legal strategy. As Vincent turned to leave, Dominique called after him. You won't win this, Vincent. You've never understood how many friends I have, how many people would choose me over you. Noah already has. Vincent paused at the door. About Noah, you might be surprised by his current perspective. Family reunions can be so enlightening. The look of uncertainty that crossed Dominique's face was all the confirmation Vincent needed. The seeds of doubt had been planted. As he exited the facility, his phone vibrated with a message from Sophia. Noah's in. Operation Severance is go. Vincent allowed himself a genuine smile for the first time in months as he texted back a single word, execute. Chapter 7, Demolition. 3 weeks after Dominique's arrest, international news outlets exploded with a new revelation. Comprehensive evidence had emerged showing Preston Harlow's pharmaceutical empire was built on stolen research, much of it from classified military medical programs. More damning still were documented connections to bioweapon programs in multiple countries, all trails leading back to companies where Dominique Reynolds served as a silent partner or consultant. Vincent watched the coverage from a secure facility in Northern Virginia, surrounded by monitors displaying real-time reactions across global intelligence communities. Beside him sat Noah, still shell-shocked from his rapid education and his family's true history, but determined to make amends for his blind loyalty to his mother. They're saying Mom could face the death penalty, Noah said quietly, staring at a news ticker scrolling across one screen. That's unlikely, Vincent replied. She'll be offered a deal in exchange for information on Preston's network. Will she take it? Vincent considered the question. No, her ego won't allow her to implicate herself, even to save her own life. She still believes her connections will protect her. Noah shook his head in disbelief. How did I never see any of this growing up? Your mother is exceptional at compartmentalization, Vincent explained. And I deliberately kept both you and Sophia insulated from my work. Not Sophia, Noah corrected him. She's been working with you for years, hasn't she? Vincent nodded, pride evident in his expression. Since college. Her medical research position is genuine, but also provides excellent cover for intelligence gathering. The door opened and Sophia entered, carrying several tablets. It's done, she announced. Preston's lawyer just received the evidence package. He's already called 3 times requesting a meeting. And the offshore accounts? Vincent asked. Frozen. All 15 of them, Sophia confirmed. The London and Zurich properties have been seized. Mom's design firm is being raided as we speak. Vincent turned to Noah. Are you still certain you want to proceed with your part? Noah squared his shoulders. Yes, I need to make this right. Hours later, Noah sat across from his mother in the same interview room Vincent had used. Dominique brightened at the sight of her son, reaching for his hands across the table. Noah, thank God. Have you spoken to the lawyers? This nightmare. I know everything, Mom. Noah interrupted, pulling his hands back. About you and Preston. About what you've been doing all these years. Dominique's expression hardened. Your father got to you. No, Mom. The truth got to me. Noah placed a document on the table. A sworn affidavit. I'm testifying against you and Preston. About the meetings, the recruitment attempts, everything. You can't be serious, Dominique hissed. After everything I've done for you, I protected you from knowing what your father really is. A cold, calculating killer who values his missions more than his family. That's exactly what you wanted me to believe, Noah acknowledged. But now I understand why he was distant. He was protecting us from the consequences of your actions. Dominique's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little. Save it, Mom. Noah cut her off, rising. The prosecutors have offered me immunity in exchange for my testimony. I suggest you consider a similar arrangement while it's still available. As he turned to leave, Dominique called after him. They'll discard you too, Noah. Vincent doesn't forgive betrayal. Ever. Ask him about Cairo if you don't believe me. Noah paused at the door. I already know about Cairo, Mom. The difference is I'm owning my mistakes. You're still denying yours. Across town, Vincent met with Preston's attorney in an upscale law office. The lawyer, sweating despite the powerful air conditioning, pushed a proposal across the polished table. My client is willing to provide complete details on Mrs. Reynolds' involvement in exchange for considerations regarding his sentencing, the attorney explained. Vincent reviewed the document dispassionately. Your client seems to be under the impression that this is a negotiation. Mr. Reynolds, surely you understand the value of Mr. Harlow's cooperation, the lawyer pressed. He can provide names, dates, account numbers, everything your wife did while using his business as cover. Interesting that 48 hours ago, Mr. Harlow was proclaiming both his and my wife's complete innocence, Vincent observed. Quite the reversal. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. New evidence has created new perspectives. Indeed, Vincent slid the proposal back untouched. Please inform Mr. Harlow that his offer is declined. The evidence against both him and my wife is more than sufficient without his cooperation. But the lawyer sputtered. Also, Vincent continued as if the man hadn't spoken. Inform him that additional information regarding his activities in Damascus in 2018 will be provided to prosecutors tomorrow morning. He might want to adjust his legal strategy accordingly. The color drained from the lawyer's face. Damascus? There's nothing in the current charges about Damascus. Not yet, Vincent agreed, standing to leave. Give Mr. Harlow my regards. That evening, Vincent convened with his team, trusted former colleagues, intelligence operatives who owed him their lives or careers, and his children. The conference room wall displayed a complex flowchart of operations spanning 2 decades. We've dismantled their financial resources, Sophia reported. Every account we know about has been frozen or seized. Their social capital is equally compromised, added Alan Merritt, a former CIA deputy director. Preston's political connections have all distanced themselves. Dominique's influential friends have gone silent. What about the unknown factors? Vincent asked. Dominique's reference to friends suggests contingencies we haven't identified. We've been monitoring all communications, Noah offered, now fully integrated into the team. Nothing unusual has been detected. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. Then we proceed to the final phase. Sophia, initiate protocol severance. As the team dispersed to execute their assignments, Vincent stood alone before the flowchart, studying the intricate connections he had spent weeks mapping and was now systematically destroying. Each node represented a relationship, an asset, a protection that Dominique and Preston had cultivated over years. One by one, the nodes on the display began changing from green to red as Vincent's team executed protocol severance, the complete and irreversible isolation of the targets from every resource and relationship they had ever established. By morning, Preston Harlow and Dominique Reynolds would stand entirely alone against the full force of international justice, precisely as Vincent had planned from the moment he had walked away from that family reunion 3 months earlier. Chapter 8. Isolation. 2 days before the preliminary hearing that would determine whether Preston and Dominique would be tried separately or together, Vincent received an unexpected visitor at his Virginia home. Special Agent Walsh arrived without warning, his expression grave. "We have a situation," Walsh announced without preamble. "Dominique has disappeared from federal custody." Vincent's expression didn't change. Disappeared during transfer to the courthouse for a pretrial meeting with her attorneys. Walsh ran a hand through his thinning hair. The transport vehicle was found abandoned, both agents unconscious but alive. No sign of Dominique. Vincent nodded slowly. The contingency she hinted at. Impressive. Walsh studied him carefully. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," Vincent admitted. "Dominique always maintains escape routes. I've been expecting something like this since her arrest. My superiors are suggesting you might be involved, creating an opportunity to deal with her personally." Vincent smiled thinly. "Your superiors credit me with too much influence over federal prisoner transportation protocols." "Maybe," Walsh conceded, "but they've authorized surveillance on you, effective immediately. Whatever history we have, Vincent, I can't interfere with that." "I wouldn't expect you to," Vincent assured him. "Tell your superiors I'll be staying right here, easily monitored. No sudden trips or unexplained absences." After Walsh departed, Vincent contacted Sophia. "Your mother has fled custody." "Right on schedule," Sophia replied, unsurprised. Facial recognition caught her boarding a private jet at a small airfield in Delaware 90 minutes ago. Destination filed as Toronto, but the flight plan diverted over Pennsylvania. "She's heading for the lake house," Vincent concluded. "Predictable. She believes the emergency documents and cash are still hidden in the boathouse safe." "They are," Sophia confirmed, along with tracking devices in every bill and document. "Noah has a team standing by 20 miles from the property. Tell him to maintain position," Vincent instructed. "She won't be alone, and I want to identify everyone involved in her escape network." For the next 18 hours, Vincent performed the role of concerned, bewildered husband perfectly. He cooperated fully with FBI surveillance, made appropriate calls to attorneys expressing shock at Dominique's escape, and appeared genuinely distressed in a brief press interaction outside his home. Meanwhile, Sophia and Noah monitored Dominique's movements from their operations center. Their mother had indeed gone directly to the family's secluded lake house in upstate New York, accompanied by 2 men identified as private military contractors with ties to Preston's overseas operations. "She accessed the safe 30 minutes ago," Noah reported. "GPS trackers show movement north toward the Canadian border." "And Preston?" Vincent asked, speaking via encrypted line from his study while FBI agents monitored the exterior of his home. "Still in custody, but his attorney has filed emergency motions claiming the evidence against him is inadmissible due to your personal involvement in the investigation," Sophia answered. "The judge has scheduled a hearing for tomorrow morning." Vincent considered this information. "Preston is a distraction. Your mother is the priority now. She'll attempt to cross at a minor checkpoint using credentials from a safe. We've alerted customs discreetly, Noah confirmed. They'll delay but not detain her, enough to allow our team to intercept before she realizes it's a trap. Good, Vincent approved. I'll join you once she's secured. The surveillance on me will ease once they believe she's fled the country. 12 hours later, Dominique Reynolds sat in a Spartan room within a hunting lodge deep in the Adirondack Mountains. Her escape had proceeded flawlessly until the border crossing, where unexpected delays had forced her to divert to a secondary route. There, her security team had been efficiently neutralized by operatives she never saw, and she had found herself transported to this isolated location. The door opened, and Vincent entered alone. I should have known, Dominique said bitterly. Was there ever really an escape? Or was it all your orchestration? The escape was genuine, Vincent replied, taking a seat across from her. Your connections are impressive, or were, until recently. What happens now? You turn me over to the authorities to face a show trial based on evidence you fabricated? Vincent shook his head. Nothing I presented was fabricated, Dominique. Manipulated and strategically revealed. Yes, but every document, every photograph, every financial record is authentic. Dominique's composure faltered slightly. You can't prove intent. I don't need to. The evidence speaks for itself. Vincent leaned forward. But we're not here to discuss your legal predicament. We're here to discuss Noah. Noah. Uncertainty crossed Dominique's features. What about him? He's made his choice to testify against you, which places him at considerable risk from your remaining allies. Vincent's voice hardened. I want the names of everyone in your network who might consider him a liability. Dominique laughed incredulously. You expect me to help you protect the son who betrayed me? I expect you to do one decent thing as his mother, Vincent replied evenly. But I'm prepared for your refusal. He placed a tablet on the table, displaying a video feed of Preston Harlow in his cell, sleeping fitfully. What is this? Dominique asked, confused. Preston's cell is currently pumping in a colorless, odorless compound derived from one of his own company's experimental formulas, Vincent explained clinically. At his current exposure level, he'll experience progressive neurological deterioration over approximately 6 weeks. Symptoms begin with tremors, advance to memory loss, and culminate in complete cognitive collapse. Horror dawned on Dominique's face. You're poisoning him. I'm demonstrating consequences, Vincent corrected her. The compound can be neutralized completely if administered within the next 4 hours. After that, the damage becomes irreversible. You're bluffing, Dominique challenged. You don't have access to his cell ventilation system. Vincent simply raised an eyebrow. The same way I didn't have the capability to frame 2 innocent people for international crimes. Dominique stared at the screen, watching Preston twitch in his sleep, the first subtle sign of the compound taking effect. The name's Dominique, Vincent prompted. Every contact who might target Noah. In exchange, Preston receives the antidote. And if I refuse, then I return you to federal custody, and nature takes its course with Preston. Vincent's voice was devoid of emotion. Your choice. Dominique's eyes darted between Vincent and the screen, calculation and fear warring in her expression. Finally, resignation settled over her features. There's a ledger, she said quietly. Hidden compartment in my desk at the design firm. Names, contacts, payment records, everything. Vincent nodded. Sophia will verify that information immediately. If it's accurate and complete, Preston receives treatment for an unexpected reaction to his medication. If not, he let the implication hang in the air. You become a monster, Vincent, Dominique whispered. No, Vincent corrected her, standing to leave. I've simply become what you always accused me of being. The man who puts objectives above sentimentality. The irony is, I learned it from you. As he exited, Dominique called after him. What happens to me now? Vincent paused in the doorway. You'll face trial for everything you've done. But Noah will be safe. The only gift I have left to give the son who called me a loser. The door closed with finality, leaving Dominique alone with the consequences of 15 years of deception. Chapter 9. Terminus. 6 months after Dominique's recapture, Vincent sat alone on the deck of a modest cabin overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The property, registered under a name unknown to anyone from his former life, represented his final severance from the past. Behind him, the cabin door opened as Noah emerged with 2 cups of coffee. Court TV says the jury's been deliberating for 3 days, Noah reported, handing his father a steaming mug. Analysts are split on which way they'll go. Vincent nodded, unsurprised. Your mother's defense team mounted an impressive case. The manipulated by love narrative plays well with certain jurors. Do you think she'll be acquitted? Noah asked, taking a seat beside his father. No, Vincent replied with certainty. The evidence is too comprehensive, your testimony too damaging. But she'll likely receive a lesser sentence than Preston. Preston Harlow had already been convicted on multiple counts of espionage, sentenced to life without parole at a maximum security federal penitentiary. His mysterious neurological episode during pretrial detention had left him with persistent tremors and memory lapses that humanized him to the jury, precisely as Vincent had calculated when ordering the antidote administered at the last possible moment. I spoke with Sophia this morning, Noah mentioned. Her cover in Europe has been officially restored. The agencies are satisfied that her involvement in Mom's case was strictly familial, not operational. Vincent smiled slightly. Your sister has always been adept at managing perceptions. They sat in comfortable silence, watching waves crash against the rocky shoreline below. Vincent had officially retired from all government work, his security clearances voluntarily surrendered. Noah had withdrawn from his university program, instead pursuing specialized training with former colleagues of his father, men and women who recognized the young man's potential and his need for redemption. Do you ever regret how far it went? Noah asked suddenly. The international warrants, Preston's condition, all of it. Vincent considered the question carefully. Regret suggests I would choose differently given another opportunity. I wouldn't, not even for my sake. I was collateral damage in your war against Mom. You were a casualty of your mother's decisions long before mine. Vincent corrected him gently. She poisoned you against me for years, Noah. The reunion simply forced me to acknowledge how successful she'd been. Noah winced at the memory of his cruel words. I'm sorry for what I said that night. About Preston being a better father. You believed it at the time, Vincent observed without rancor. Your mother is exceptionally persuasive. Still, Noah insisted, I should have seen through her manipulation. Perhaps, Vincent allowed, but you've more than compensated through your testimony and subsequent choices. His phone vibrated with a news alert. Vincent checked the screen, his expression unchanged as he read the notification. The verdict? Noah asked. Vincent nodded. Guilty on all counts except one. Sentencing in 3 weeks, but the minimum mandatory is 20 years. Noah exhaled slowly. It's really over then. This chapter is, Vincent agreed. Life continues. Later that evening, as Noah slept inside the cabin, Vincent received a secure call from Sophia. Congratulations, Dad, she said when he answered. Justice served. At considerable cost, Vincent noted. But worth it, Sophia asked, knowing her father well enough to understand his calculus. Vincent gazed out at the moonlight reflecting off the Pacific. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. 15 Years of Loyalty. Derek Harvey adjusted his tie in the bathroom mirror of Stevens and Associates Construction, the same reflection he'd seen every morning for 15 years. At 42, he still carried himself with the disciplined posture of his military days, though the gray threading through his dark hair betrayed the weight of corporate life. His calloused hands, remnants of his time in Army Corps of Engineers, straightened the collar of his pressed shirt. The company had grown from a small residential contractor to a major commercial operation during Derek's tenure. He'd started as a project manager fresh out of his military service, bringing precision and integrity that Bernard Stevens initially valued. Derek's methodical approach and unwavering ethics had saved the company millions in potential lawsuits and regulatory fines over the years. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife, Kendra. Emma's fever spiked to 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Doctor wants to see her immediately. Can you come home? Derek's chest tightened. Their 8-year-old daughter Emma was everything to him and Kendra. After years of trying to conceive, Emma's arrival had felt miraculous. Now, with Kendra's part-time nursing schedule at the local clinic, they developed a system where Derek could flex his hours when needed. He walked to Bernard's corner office, passing the framed photos of luxury projects that Derek had personally overseen. Bernard Stevens, a portly man in his late 50s with thinning hair and expensive suits that couldn't hide his soft lifestyle, was on the phone arguing with someone about permit delays. "Bernard, I need to take today off," Derek said when the call ended. "Emma's sick and needs to go to the doctor." Bernard barely looked up from his computer. "Can't Kendra handle it? We got the Morrison site inspection today. She's already at the clinic working a double shift to cover for someone. Emma's running a high fever. Derek, you've been taking a lot of time off lately." Bernard's tone carried an edge that Derek had been noticing more frequently. "This is the first day I've requested off in 3 months, and before that, it was 6 months ago when Emma had the flu." Bernard leaned back in his leather chair, his small eyes narrowing. "Look, family is important, but so is this business. The Morrison project alone is worth $2 million to us. I trained Wilson on the inspection protocols specifically for situations like this," Derek replied, referring to Bernard's 25-year-old nephew, who'd been hired 6 months ago despite having no construction experience beyond a business degree. "Wilson isn't you, Derek. He doesn't have your expertise." The way Bernard said it made Derek's jaw clench. "Then maybe you shouldn't have put someone unqualified in a position where they need to handle multi-million-dollar inspections." The room went silent. Bernard's face flushed red, and Derek could see the vein in his temple pulsing, a warning sign Derek had learned to recognize over the years. "You know what, Derek? Take your day. Take all the days you want." Bernard's voice was dangerously quiet. "But when you come back, we're going to have a serious conversation about your attitude and your priorities." Derek left without another word, his mind focused on getting to Emma. As he drove home through the familiar streets of their suburban neighborhood, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally shifted in that office. At home, he found Kendra pacing in the kitchen, still in her scrubs from the morning shift she'd rushed home from. Emma lay on the couch, flushed and listless, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. "The doctor can see her at 2, Kendra said, relief evident in her voice when she saw Derek. "Thank God you could get away." Derek knelt beside Emma, placing a gentle hand on her forehead. Her skin was burning up. "Hey, princess, Daddy's here now." Emma's eyes fluttered open, and she managed a weak smile. "I don't feel good, Daddy." "I know, sweetheart. We're going to get you all better." As they waited in the pediatrician's office later that afternoon, Derek's phone remained mercifully silent. No calls from the office, no urgent texts about the Morrison inspection. Maybe Bernard was handling things professionally after all. Dr. Martinez, their longtime pediatrician, diagnosed Emma with a severe case of strep throat and prescribed antibiotics. She should start feeling better within 24 hours, he assured them. But keep her hydrated and let her rest. That evening, as Emma slept peacefully in her bed, antibiotics already working their magic, Derek and Kendra sat on their back porch. The weight of the day's confrontation with Bernard settled on Derek's shoulders like a familiar burden. "You did the right thing," Kendra said, as if reading his thoughts. "Emma needed you today." Derek nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead to tomorrow's return to the office. In his military days, he learned to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct was telling him that Bernard Stevens was planning something. The question was, what was Derek going to do about it? Chapter 2, Priorities Straight. Derek arrived at the office the next morning to find his key card deactivated. The security guard, Mike Bird, an older man who'd worked the front desk for 8 years, looked uncomfortable as he buzzed Derek in. "Sorry about that, Mr. Harvey. Mr. Stevens said there was some kind of system glitch with your access," Mike said, though his eyes suggested he knew better. Derek made his way to his office, noting the subtle changes immediately. His project files had been moved. His computer showed signs of someone else accessing it. When he tried to log into the company system, his credentials had been changed. "Derek Harvey." Bernard's voice carried across the office floor with artificial authority. "My office. Now." The walk to Bernard's corner office felt different this time. Conversations stopped as Derek passed, and he could feel the eyes of his colleagues, people he'd worked alongside for years, watching with a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. Bernard sat behind his desk with Wilson Stevens beside him, the young man's smug expression immediately putting Derek on alert. Wilson was tall and lean, with the kind of entitled arrogance that came from never earning anything. His expensive clothes and casual demeanor stood in stark contrast to the serious atmosphere of the meeting. "Have a seat, Derek," Bernard said, not looking up from folder on his desk. "I'll stand." Bernard finally raised his eyes, and Derek saw something cold there that hadn't been present in their previous interactions. "Yesterday's display of insubordination has forced me to make some difficult decisions." Insubordination. Derek's voice remained level, though his military training was kicking in. Assess the threat, identify exits, prepare for confrontation. You prioritize your personal life over the company's needs. You question my business decisions. You undermine my nephew's position. Bernard ticked off each point on his fingers. "Frankly, Derek, you need to get your priorities straight." Wilson shifted in his chair, unable to hide his anticipation. "I took a day off to care for my sick daughter," Derek said slowly. "That's not insubordination. That's being a father. And that attitude is exactly the problem." Bernard stood up, pacing to the window, overlooking the construction yard below. "This company doesn't run on feelings, Derek. It runs on commitment, on putting the business first. I've put this business first for 15 years. I've saved you millions in lawsuits, prevented regulatory disasters, and built relationships with every major contractor in the city. My record speaks for itself. Your record is exactly why this is so disappointing." Bernard turned back to face him. "You are one of my most valued employees. But valued employees don't abandon critical inspections to play nursemaid." The word nursemaid hit Derek like a physical blow, and he saw Wilson smirk at his uncle's choice of words. "That's my daughter you're talking about," Derek said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet that anyone who'd served with him would recognize as a warning. "And this is my company," Bernard replied. "Which brings me to my decision. I'm letting you go, Derek. Effective immediately." The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Derek felt something cold settle in his chest, not shock, but a familiar calm that had served him well in combat situations. "After 15 years, you're firing me for taking one day to care for my sick child?" "I'm restructuring the department," Bernard said with bureaucratic efficiency. "Wilson will be taking over your responsibilities. He has fresh ideas and isn't burdened by old-fashioned thinking." Derek looked at Wilson, who was now openly grinning. The kid couldn't hide his triumph, and Derek filed that arrogance away for future reference. "Wilson has no construction experience. He doesn't understand regulatory compliance, safety protocols, or project management. He'll learn," Bernard said dismissively. "Sometimes it's better to train someone from scratch than to work with someone whose priorities are confused." "My priorities are perfectly clear," Derek said, standing straighter. "Family first, integrity second, everything else falls in line after that." "Well, those priorities just cost you your job." Bernard opened a manila folder and slid papers across the desk. "Severance package is standard, 2 weeks' pay. Sign these, and we can part ways amicably." Derek didn't touch the papers. Instead, he studied Bernard's face, noting the satisfied expression that the man wasn't quite managing to hide. This wasn't just about yesterday's confrontation. This was planned. "How long have you been planning this?" Derek asked. "What do you mean?" "The key card was already deactivated when I arrived. My computer access was changed overnight. These papers were prepared before our conversation." Derek's analytical mind was processing the timeline. "You decided to fire me yesterday, didn't you?" Bernard's silence was answer enough. "You used my daughter's illness as an excuse to get rid of me, so you could give my job to your nephew." Derek's voice was steady, but there was steel in it now. 15 years of loyalty, and you replaced me with a kid who couldn't manage a lemonade stand." "Wilson is highly qualified," Bernard said defensively. "Wilson is your brother's son who needs a job." Derek looked directly at Wilson. "Tell me, Wilson, what's the standard concrete curing time for a foundation pour in temperatures below 40 degrees? Wilson's confident expression faltered. That depends on various factors. 28 days minimum with proper additives, Derek said. Basic knowledge for anyone in construction management. What's the OSHA requirement for fall protection on structures above 6 feet? Derek, this isn't necessary, Bernard interrupted. Personal fall arrest systems, Derek continued, ignoring Bernard. Required for any work at heights over 6 feet. Wilson, what's the penalty for a safety violation that results in serious injury? Wilson was sweating now. Uncle Bernie, do I really need to? Up to $70,000 per violation, possible criminal charges for willful negligence, and immediate project shutdown. Derek turned back to Bernard. That's who you're trusting with multi-million-dollar projects. Enough. Bernard's face was red with anger and embarrassment. You're done here, Derek. Security will escort you out. As if summoned, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Derek recognized them both. Men he'd worked with for years, who now looked deeply uncomfortable with their assignment. That won't be necessary, Derek said. I'll clear out my desk and leave quietly. As Derek walked back to his office, his mind was already working. Bernard had made this personal the moment he used Emma's illness as a weapon. The man had underestimated who he was dealing with, and that mistake would prove costly. Derek packed his personal items while his former colleagues watched in uncomfortable silence. 15 years of relationships, contacts, and trust couldn't be packed into a cardboard box, but Bernard Stevens was about to learn that lesson the hard way. As Derek walked toward the exit, he paused at Mike Bird's security desk. Mike, you've been here a long time. You've seen how this company really operates. Mike nodded cautiously. Yes, sir, Mr. Harvey. Remember that, Derek said quietly. When things start falling apart around here, remember what you've seen. Outside in the parking lot, Derek sat in his truck and pulled out his phone. He had one call to make, a call that would set everything in motion. His finger hovered over the contact for a moment, then pressed dial. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Colonel Martinez, DEA Financial Crimes Unit. Colonel, this is Derek Harvey. I need a cash and a favor. Chapter 3, One Call. Derek drove slowly through the city streets, his mind processing the conversation with Colonel Martinez. Ramon Martinez had served alongside Derek in Afghanistan, where their engineering unit had uncovered a sophisticated money laundering operation run by local contractors. Derek's methodical investigation work had earned Martinez a promotion and a transfer to the DEA's Financial Crimes Division. I remember Stevens and Associates, Martinez had said during their call. Didn't they have some issues with federal contracts a few years back? Allegations of overcharging on Army Corps projects, Derek confirmed. I was the one who flagged the discrepancies and helped clean house. Saved the company from federal prosecution. And now they fired you for taking care of your sick daughter. Martinez's voice had carried the disgust of a fellow father. What exactly are you thinking, Derek? I'm thinking Bernard Stevens has been very careful to hide his current activities from me, but maybe not careful enough. Now, sitting in his truck outside Kendra's clinic, Derek reviewed what he knew. Over the past 2 years, Stevens and Associates have been aggressively underbidding on municipal contracts, jobs they shouldn't have been able to win with their margins. Wilson's sudden hiring and placement in a critical position wasn't nepotism. It was strategic positioning for someone Bernard could control completely. Kendra emerged from the clinic at 6 p.m., exhaustion evident in her posture. She slid into the passenger seat and immediately noticed Derek's expression. You got fired, didn't you? She said softly. Derek nodded, then told her everything about the morning's confrontation. Kendra listened without interruption, her nursing background having taught her to absorb information before reacting. So what's your plan? She asked when he finished. Plan? Derek Harvey, I've been married to you for 12 years. You have that look, the same one you had when you figured out that contractor was stealing supplies from the base in Afghanistan. You're not just angry, you're calculating. Derek smiled despite himself. Kendra knew him too well. Bernard made 2 mistakes, Derek said. First, he assumed I was just another corporate employee he could discard. Second, he put Wilson in charge of information I used to protect this company from scrutiny. What kind of scrutiny? The kind that involves federal agencies and criminal investigations. That evening, after Emma had eaten dinner and was feeling well enough to color at the kitchen table, Derek set up his laptop and began working. His 15 years at Stevens & Associates hadn't just been about managing construction projects. They'd been about learning every aspect of the company's operations. Derek had access to industry databases that tracked bidding patterns, subcontractor relationships, and material costs. Within 2 hours, he'd identified several anomalies in Stevens & Associates' recent contracts that painted a concerning picture. The company was consistently underbidding by margins that should have resulted in significant losses, yet their quarterly reports showed steady profits. Their primary concrete supplier, Consolidated Materials, had no business license on record and was owned by a shell company registered in Delaware. Most damning, several of their recent municipal projects had used subcontractors with connections to known organized crime figures. Information Derek had previously flagged and been told to let sleeping dogs lie. Derek's phone rang at 9 p.m. The caller ID showed Bernard Stevens. "Derek, we need to talk." Bernard's voice was different now. Less arrogant, more urgent. "I think we said everything that needed to be said this morning. Look, maybe I was hasty. You caught me on a bad day, and I overreacted. Come in tomorrow, and we can discuss reinstating your position." Derek almost smiled. Martinez had worked quickly. "What changed your mind, Bernard?" I've been thinking about your contributions to the company. Maybe we can work something out. Does this have anything to do with the phone calls you started receiving this afternoon?" The silence on the other end was telling. "I don't know what you mean," Bernard finally said. "Bernard, I've known you for 15 years. I can hear the panic in your voice. What exactly has you so worried?" "Nothing. Just think about my offer, okay? Come in tomorrow morning." Derek ended the call and looked at Kendra, who had been listening from the kitchen doorway. "That was fast," she said. "Faster than I expected." Derek's phone buzzed with a text message. "Martinez works with very motivated people." The text was from an unknown number. "Package delivered. Target received 33 calls in 6 hours. All agencies now aware. Recommend maintaining distance. RM. 33 calls. From federal agencies, state regulators, municipal oversight committees, and probably a few criminal investigators." Derek had spent 15 years protecting Bernard Stevens from exactly this kind of scrutiny, and now the protection was gone. Emma looked up from her coloring book. "Daddy, why do you look happy but angry at the same time?" Derek went to his daughter and knelt beside her chair. "Sometimes, Princess, bad people do bad things and think they won't get caught. But eventually, the truth comes out." "Is that good?" "That's very good." Later that night, after Emma was asleep and Kendra was reading in bed, Derek stood on their back porch looking up at the stars. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from Bernard, Wilson, and several numbers he didn't recognize. He let them all go to voicemail. Tomorrow would bring consequences for Bernard Stevens that the man couldn't imagine. Derek had spent his military career learning that the most effective attacks came for directions your enemy never anticipated. Bernard had expected Derek to quietly accept his termination, maybe file a wrongful termination suit, perhaps badmouth the company to a few industry contacts. Bernard Stevens had no idea that Derek Harvey had friends in federal law enforcement who specialized in construction industry fraud. He didn't know that Derek had been carefully documenting questionable activities for years, creating a paper trail that would make any prosecutor's job easy. Most importantly, Bernard didn't understand that Derek's military background had taught him patience, strategic thinking, and the importance of total victory over half measures. As Derek turned to go inside, his phone rang one more time. The caller ID showed Wilson Stevens. Derek answered. "Please." Wilson's voice was shaking. "You have to call off whatever you did. Uncle Bernie is going crazy. People are showing up at the office with badges and briefcases. I don't know what's happening." "Wilson, let me give you some advice," Derek said calmly. "When federal investigators ask you questions, tell them the truth. Don't lie to protect your uncle. He wouldn't protect you. I don't understand any of this. I just graduated college 6 months ago. Then you should have stayed at your entry-level job instead of taking a position you weren't qualified for." Derek's voice carried no sympathy. "Actions have consequences, Wilson. You and your uncle are about to learn that lesson. Derek hung up and went inside, where Kendra was waiting at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee. How bad is it going to get? She asked. Derek considered the question seriously. For Bernard and Wilson? Very bad. They've been playing games with federal contracts and municipal funds while using connections to organized crime figures. When the investigators finish connecting the dots, could you get in trouble? You worked there for 15 years. I documented every concern I had and was consistently overruled. Martinez has copies of reports I filed that were ignored or buried. If anything, I'll be considered a key witness who tried to keep the company clean. Kendra reached across the table and took his hand. I'm proud of you. For what? For not becoming like them. 15 years in that environment, and you never compromised your integrity. Derek squeezed her hand. Emma needs to see that doing the right thing matters, even when it costs you something. As they headed upstairs to bed, Derek felt a sense of completion he hadn't experienced since his military service. Tomorrow would bring chaos for Bernard Stevens, but for Derek Harvey, it would bring justice. The war was just beginning. Chapter 4, Cascading Failures. Derek woke at 5:30 a.m. to his phone buzzing incessantly. 17 missed calls from Bernard, 9 from Wilson, and 6 from numbers he didn't recognize. The voicemail box was full. He made coffee and sat at his kitchen table, listening to the messages on speaker while Kendra got Emma ready for school. The progression from angry demands to desperate pleading painted a clear picture of Bernard's deteriorating situation. Derek, call me back immediately. I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but it stops now. That was from 10 p.m. the previous night. By midnight, look, we can work this out. Whatever you want, your job back, a raise, more vacation time. Just make these calls stop. The 3 a.m. message was different. They froze our operating accounts. How the hell did you manage that? Call me. Derek deleted the messages and checked the local news website. Nothing yet, but that would change soon. Federal financial investigations moved slowly until they didn't, and when they accelerated, the results were spectacular. Emma bounded into the kitchen, fully recovered from her illness and excited about returning to school. Daddy, are you taking me today? Absolutely, princess. Derek realized this was the first morning in 15 years he didn't have to rush to Stevens and Associates. The freedom felt strange and liberating. After dropping Emma at school, Derek drove to downtown, parking across from Stevens and Associates. The construction company occupied a 4-story building that Bernard owned outright, or had, until federal investigators discovered the building's mortgage was being paid through questionable financial arrangements. Derek didn't have to wait long. At 8:15 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled up to the building entrance. Men and women in business suits, carrying briefcases and federal identification, entered the building. Derek recognized the pattern from his military days, a coordinated multi-agency operation. His phone rang. Derek, it's Ramon Martinez. Thought you'd want to know. IRS criminal investigation, FBI financial crimes, and our DEA unit hit Stevens and Associates this morning with simultaneous search warrants. That was fast work. Your documentation made it easy. Turns out Stevens has been running a sophisticated money laundering operation using federal construction contracts as cover. The concrete supplier you flagged? Front company for a drug trafficking organization. Those underbid municipal projects? Funded with dirty money to maintain the appearance of legitimate business while laundering drug proceeds. Derek felt vindicated, but not surprised. What about Wilson? Kid's claiming ignorance, and he might be telling the truth. Problem is, he signed off on documents as project manager that he clearly didn't understand. Conspiracy charges don't require intent if you're in a position of responsibility. Through his windshield, Derek watched Wilson Stevens being led from the building in handcuffs. The young man looked terrified and confused, his expensive clothes wrinkled from what had obviously been a sleepless night. Bernard, flight risk assessment pending. He tried to access offshore accounts this morning, which triggered additional charges. Martinez paused. Derek, you need to know. Your name came up in their financial records. Frequently. What do you mean? Stevens has been forging your signature on documents for at least 2 years. Project approvals, safety certifications, even regulatory filings. If you hadn't been fired yesterday, you'd probably be in handcuffs too. Derek felt cold understanding wash over him. He was setting me up to take the fall. That's our assessment. Wilson was supposed to be the incompetent frontman. You were the experienced scapegoat, and Bernard would disappear when the investigation got close. Martinez's voice carried professional admiration. Good thing you called when you did. Derek watched more federal agents entering the building, carrying boxes of evidence. What happens now? Federal prosecutor will want to interview you. Your documentation shows a clear pattern of you trying to prevent these activities, so you're a witness, not a suspect. Could be a long process, though. After ending the call, Derek drove to his neighborhood coffee shop and found a corner table. For the first time in months, he opened his laptop not for work, but for personal planning. With his severance and Kendra's nursing income, they could manage for several months while he decided his next move. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Harvey, this is Sean Platt, reporter for the Herald. Could we discuss Stevens and Associates? Derek deleted the text without responding. Then another. Derek Harvey, Channel 7 News. Available for comment on federal raid. Word was spreading fast. His phone rang, showing Kendra's number. Are you seeing the news? She asked immediately. What news? It's on every channel. Major construction company raided in federal investigation. They're showing footage of people being arrested outside your old office. Derek smiled grimly. Bernard Stevens is learning that actions have consequences. The reporters are saying this involves drug money and organized crime. Derek, you worked there for 15 years. Are we going to be okay? We're going to be fine. Better than fine. Derek could hear the relief in his own voice. Kendra, I spent years trying to keep that company clean, documenting problems, and being told to look the other way. If I hadn't been fired yesterday, I'd be facing criminal charges right now. You think Bernard planned to blame you? I know he did, and he almost got away with it. Derek spent the rest of the morning at the coffee shop, watching news coverage and fielding calls from former colleagues. The story was developing rapidly. Bernard Stevens arrested on federal racketeering charges. Wilson Stevens charged with conspiracy and fraud, company assets frozen, multiple ongoing investigations into municipal contract irregularities. At noon, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Harvey? This is Joel Cole, special agent with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to schedule an interview regarding your employment at Stevens and Associates. Of course. When and where? Today would be preferable, if you're available. Federal Building, downtown, 2 p.m. Derek agreed and spent the drive downtown thinking about the questions they'd ask. His military training had taught him to be precise and factual when dealing with investigators. Provide what they need, avoid speculation, stick to documented facts. The FBI interview lasted 3 hours. Special Agent Cole and his partner, a DEA agent named Michael Kaufman, methodically walked through Derek's 15-year employment history. Derek provided copies of reports he'd filed, emails documenting concerns, and detailed explanations of questionable activities he'd observed. Mr. Harvey, your documentation is exceptionally thorough, Agent Cole noted. Most employees in your position don't maintain this level of detail. Military habit, Derek replied. Document everything, report up the chain, maintain paper trails. Stevens apparently told several associates that you were his compliance officer, Agent Kaufman said. Did you consider yourself responsible for regulatory adherence? I considered myself responsible for doing my job correctly and reporting problems when I saw them. Bernard Stevens consistently overruled my recommendations and told me to focus on project management, not regulatory issues. The agents exchanged glances. Mr. Harvey, we found documents with your forged signature approving activities you've told us you opposed. How do you explain that? Derek had been expecting this question. Check the dates on those documents against my calendar. I bet most of them were signed when I was out of the office, vacation days, sick days, or business travel. Agent Cole made a note. We'll verify those timelines. Bernard Stevens has been planning to use me as a scapegoat for months, maybe years, Derek said. Firing me yesterday was probably panic. He realized the investigation was closing in and needed me gone before I could expose his plans. As Derek left the federal building, he felt lighter than he had in years. The investigators clearly viewed him as a key witness, not a suspect. His meticulous documentation had protected him from becoming Bernard's fall guy. His phone had accumulated 17 more messages during the interview. News reporters, former colleagues, even a few former clients wanting to know what had happened. Derek deleted them all except one from Mike Bird, the security guard. "Mr. Harvey, you told me to remember what I've seen. Well, I've been talking to federal investigators all day, and I remember everything. Thank you for the warning." Derek smiled as he drove home. Bernard Stevens had built his criminal operation assuming that everyone around him was either corrupt or controllable. He'd underestimated the integrity of his employees and the memory of those who'd witnessed his activities. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Derek Harvey could sleep peacefully knowing that justice was finally catching up with Bernard Stevens. Chapter 5, Network Effects. 2 weeks after the federal raid, Derek sat in his home office reviewing job offers. Word had spread quickly through the construction industry that Derek Harvey was the whistleblower who'd brought down Stevens and Associates, and the response was overwhelming. 7 major construction companies had reached out, impressed by his integrity and detailed knowledge of regulatory compliance. The most interesting offer came from Raymond McFarland, president of McFarland Construction, the largest competitor to Stevens and Associates. McFarland wanted to meet personally, suggesting an executive-level position overseeing all regulatory and compliance operations across their multi-state operation. Derek's phone rang, interrupting his review. The caller ID showed his attorney, Isaac Zhang, whom he'd retained to handle the inevitable legal complexities. "Derek, we need to talk." Isaac's voice carried unusual excitement. "I just got off the phone with the federal prosecutor. They want you as their star witness in the Stevens case." "What does that mean?" "It means Bernard Stevens is facing serious prison time, and your testimony is crucial to their case. They're offering witness protection if needed, but more importantly, they want to discuss a reward." Derek frowned. "What kind of reward?" Federal Whistleblower Protection Act allows for significant financial compensation when someone exposes major fraud involving federal contracts. We're talking about potentially millions of dollars in recovered funds. Derek had never considered financial gain from exposing Bernard's crimes. Justice had been motivation enough. "There's more," Isaac continued. "Stevens and Associates is being dissolved, and their assets are being liquidated. Several clients are looking for a new construction company to complete their projects. If you were to start your own company." The implications hit Derek immediately. Bernard Stevens had spent years building a client base and reputation that Derek had helped maintain through his competent project management. Now that reputation was destroyed, but the client's needs remained. "I need significant capital to start a construction company." Which brings me to the other call I received today. "Kendra Morgan wants to speak with you." Derek was confused for a moment, then realized Isaac meant Kendra's uncle, Wilson Lester, a successful businessman who'd built a chain of automotive dealerships across 3 states. Wilson wants to discuss a business partnership. Apparently, he's been looking for investment opportunities in construction. After ending the call, Derek sat back in his chair, mind racing. The possibility of starting his own construction company had never seriously occurred to him, but the opportunity was presenting itself organically. His phone buzzed with another call, this one from Special Agent Cole. "Mr. Harvey, we've completed our analysis of the forged documents. You were correct. Every signature was dated when you were documented to be out of the office. Stevens had been systematically forging your approval for illegal activities for over 18 months. How bad is the situation? RICO charges, money laundering, conspiracy, fraud, and now document forgery. He's looking at 25 to life if convicted. His attorney is pushing for a plea bargain." Derek felt satisfaction mixed with sadness. Bernard had brought this on himself, but the destruction was comprehensive. What about Wilson? Different story. Kid was genuinely ignorant of most activities, but he did sign documents he didn't understand while in a position of authority. Prosecutor is offering a plea deal, probation and restitution in exchange for full cooperation. That afternoon, Derek drove to McFarland Construction for his meeting with Raymond McFarland. The company's headquarters impressed him. Modern, efficient, with photographs of major projects lining the hallways. McFarland himself was a man in his early 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd built his success through competence rather than connections. Derek Harvey, McFarland stood to shake hands. The man who brought down Bernard Stevens. The man who reported criminal activity, Derek corrected. McFarland smiled approvingly. Exactly the kind of precision I need. Let me be direct. I want to hire you as my chief compliance officer. Full authority over all regulatory matters. Direct report to me, salary and benefits that reflect the importance of the position. The offer was generous, significantly more than Derek had been making at Stevens and Associates, with equity participation and full authority to implement compliance programs across all company operations. I'm flattered by the offer, Derek said, but I need to ask, why is compliance so important to you? McFarland walked to his window, looking out at the construction yard below. 20 years ago, I made some mistakes. Cut corners on safety, overlooked some regulatory requirements, trusted the wrong subcontractors. Nobody was hurt, and we didn't break any laws, but we came close. Too close. He turned back to Derek. I learned that reputation and integrity are the most valuable assets a company can have. Bernard Stevens forgot that lesson, if he ever learned it at all. Derek appreciated the honesty. I need to consider all my options. I've been approached about starting my own company. I respect that. Take your time. McFarland returned to his desk. But consider this. Building a company from scratch means years of development, significant risk, and no guarantee of success. Working here means immediate impact, established relationships, and resources to make real changes in the industry. Driving home, Derek's phone rang with yet another call from a reporter, this one from a national business publication wanting to discuss corporate whistleblowing. Derek let it go to voicemail, along with the 6 other media calls he'd received that day. The attention was becoming overwhelming. Derek Harvey, the construction manager, had lived a quiet, private life. Derek Harvey, the federal witness, was becoming a public figure, and he wasn't comfortable with the transition. At home, he found Kendra in the kitchen with Emma, helping with homework while dinner cooked on the stove. The domestic scene felt like a sanctuary from the chaos surrounding the Stevens case. Uncle Wilson called, Kendra said. He wants to have dinner tomorrow night to discuss a business opportunity. Your uncle moves fast. He's been successful because he recognizes opportunities and acts quickly. The question is whether you're ready for that kind of change. Derek looked at Emma, focused intently on her math homework. His daughter's future will be shaped by decisions he made now. The safe choice would be accepting McFarland's offer, guaranteed income, established company, minimal risk. The bold choice would be starting his own company, with all the uncertainty and potential that entailed. Daddy, Emma looked up from her homework. What's a whistleblower? Derek glanced at Kendra, who shrugged. Obviously, Emma had overheard conversations or seen news reports. A whistleblower is someone who sees something wrong and reports it to the people who can fix it, Derek said. Like telling the teacher when someone is cheating? Exactly like that. Emma considered this. But what if the person who's cheating gets mad at you? Derek knelt beside his daughter's chair. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people angry, but you still have to do it because telling the truth is more important than keeping people happy. Are you a whistleblower, Daddy? Yes, Princess. I am. Emma nodded seriously, then returned to her homework. For her, the moral equation was simple. See something wrong, report it, accept the consequences. Derek envied her clarity. That evening, after Emma was in bed, Derek and Kendra sat at their kitchen table with coffee and a yellow legal pad, listing pros and cons of his various options. The conversation went late into the night, covering practical concerns, financial projections, and long-term goals. What do you want to do? Kendra asked finally. Derek looked at the legal pad covered with their analysis, then set it aside. I want to build something, not just work for someone else's vision, but create something that reflects our values. Kendra smiled. Then we start a company. As Derek turned off the lights and headed upstairs, he felt the same sense of purpose he'd experienced during his military service. Bernard Stevens had given him an unexpected gift, the opportunity to start fresh build something better, and prove that integrity was not just idealistic but practical. The war with Bernard Stevens was won. Tomorrow, Derek Harvey would begin building his own empire. Chapter 6: Foundations. The meeting with Wilson Lester took place in an upscale steakhouse downtown, where Derek learned that Kendra's uncle was more than just a successful car dealer. Wilson owned 3 dealerships, had investment partnerships in 2 construction companies in neighboring states, and maintained relationships with banks and bonding companies that could provide the financial backing necessary for major construction projects. "Derek, I've been following the Stevens case," Wilson said over dinner. "What impressed me wasn't just that you exposed the corruption, but how methodically you documented everything. That's the kind of attention to detail I look for in business partners." "Business partners?" Wilson smiled. "I'm proposing a full partnership. I provide the capital and financial connections. You provide the expertise and industry relationships. We split ownership 50-50, with you handling all operational decisions and me focusing on the business development side." Derek had expected an investment offer, not a partnership proposal. That's extremely generous. It's also extremely smart. The construction industry needs companies that can be trusted, and right now, your name is synonymous with integrity. That reputation is worth more than any amount of startup capital. Over the next 2 hours, Wilson laid out a comprehensive business plan. Start with smaller municipal contracts to establish the new company's reputation, then expand to larger commercial projects. Focus on regulatory compliance as a competitive advantage, using Derek's expertise to win contracts from clients who wanted to avoid the risks associated with less scrupulous contractors. "What would you call the company?" Wilson asked. Derek had been thinking about this question since their phone conversation. "Harvey and Associates." Simple, professional, and it puts the emphasis on competence rather than flashy marketing. "Harvey and Associates," Wilson repeated, testing the sound. "I like it. Clean, trustworthy, memorable." The legal paperwork moved quickly. Isaac Zhang handled the incorporation, licensing, and insurance requirements while Wilson arranged for business accounts, bonding, and credit lines. Within 3 weeks of their dinner meeting, Harvey and Associates existed as a legal entity with the financial backing to bid on substantial projects. Derek's first hire was Mike Bird, the former Stevens and Associates security guard who'd provided crucial testimony to federal investigators. Mike's background included 10 years as a municipal building inspector before joining Stevens, making him perfect for Harvey and Associates' focus on regulatory compliance. "I never thought I'd work construction again after what happened at Stevens," Mike said during his interview. "But working for someone with your reputation would be an honor." Derek's second hire surprised everyone, including himself. Wilson Stevens called 3 weeks after his plea agreement was finalized. "Mr. Harvey, I know this is probably crazy, but I want to ask if you consider hiring me." Derek's initial reaction was immediate refusal, but something in Wilson's voice made him pause. "Explain." "I learned more about construction in the past month dealing with federal investigators than I learned in 6 months working for my uncle. I realize how completely unprepared I was for that position, and how much damage my ignorance could have caused." Wilson's voice carried genuine humility. "I'm not asking for a management position or special treatment. I want to start at the bottom, learn the business properly, and maybe eventually earn a position based on competence instead of family connections." Derek considered the request. Wilson's testimony had been crucial in securing Bernard's conviction, and the young man was facing significant restitution payments that would take years to satisfy. Entry-level position, standard pay, no special considerations based on your family name or previous employment, Derek said finally. "Yes, sir. Absolutely. You'll be working directly under Mike Bird, learning regulatory compliance and project management fundamentals. Any problems with authority, any indication you're not taking this seriously, and you're gone immediately." "Understood, Mr. Harvey. Thank you for the chance." Harvey and Associates' first contract came through an unexpected source. Alma Singh, the city's director of municipal projects, called Derek directly. "Mr. Harvey, we have a situation." The Parks Department awarded a contract for 3 new playground installations to Stevens and Associates before the federal investigation. Obviously, that contract is void, but the playgrounds need to be completed before summer. Derek reviewed the project specifications that afternoon. 3 elementary school playgrounds, total budget of $180,000, completion deadline of May 15th. The profit margins were slim, but the project would establish Harvey and Associates' reputation with the city. "We can do it," Derek told Alma Singh. "On time, on budget, and with full regulatory compliance." "I was hoping you'd say that. The contract is yours." Derek's first project meeting with his small team, Mike Bird, Wilson Stevens, and 2 experienced construction workers he'd hired, took place in Harvey and Associates' office, a converted garage behind Derek's house. The informality of the setting contrasted sharply with Stevens and Associates' corporate headquarters, but Derek preferred the personal touch. "This project is about more than building playgrounds," Derek told his team. "Every detail of our work will be scrutinized, photographed, and discussed. We need to be perfect." Wilson raised his hand tentatively. "Mr. Harvey, what if we encounter problems? Unexpected conditions, supplier delays, weather issues?" Derek smiled, recognizing the question as evidence that Wilson was actually thinking about project management challenges. "We plan for contingencies, communicate proactively with the client, and solve problems before they become crises. That's how you build a reputation." The playground project went flawlessly. Derek's meticulous planning anticipated every potential issue, from soil conditions to equipment delivery schedules. Wilson Stevens proved to be a dedicated worker, arriving early and staying late, asking thoughtful questions and taking detailed notes. Mike Bird's regulatory expertise ensured every inspection was passed on the first attempt. Most importantly, Derek insisted on exceeding the contract specifications wherever possible. Higher quality materials, additional safety features, enhanced accessibility options, all provided at no extra cost to demonstrate Harvey and Associates' commitment to excellence. The project completed 2 days ahead of schedule and $3,000 under budget. Derek returned the surplus to the city, a gesture that generated significant positive attention in both city government and local media. "Harvey and Associates delivers excellence on first municipal project," read the headline in the local business journal. The article detailed Derek's background, the formation of his company, and his commitment to ethical business practices. More importantly, the article caught the attention of other potential clients. Derek's phone began ringing with inquiries about larger projects, office buildings, retail developments, industrial facilities. Each caller mentioned hearing about Harvey and Associates through word-of-mouth recommendations or media coverage. 3 months after incorporating, Harvey and Associates had completed 4 projects, employed 12 people, and maintained a waiting list of potential contracts. Derek's reputation for integrity, combined with Wilson Lester's business development skills, had created demand that exceeded their current capacity. The success felt surreal to Derek, who remembered the despair of being fired for caring for his daughter. Now, that same concern for family and values was driving his company's growth. Clients specifically sought out Harvey and Associates because they wanted to work with someone they could trust. The most satisfying moment came when Special Agent Cole called with an update on Bernard Stevens' case. "Plea bargain fell through," Cole reported. "Stevens refused to accept responsibility for the full scope of his activities. Case is going to trial, and your testimony will be crucial." Derek felt ready for the challenge. "When do we start?" "Jury selection begins next month. Are you prepared for the media attention this will generate?" Derek looked around his home office, where framed certificates for completed projects were starting to cover the walls. His new life was built on the foundation of truth and integrity that Bernard Stevens had tried to destroy. "I'm prepared for whatever comes next." Chapter 7. The Trial of Truth. The federal courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when Derek arrived for the first day of Bernard Stevens' trial. 6 months had passed since the original charges were filed, and media interest had intensified rather than faded. The case had become a symbol of corporate corruption and the importance of whistleblower protection. Derek wore his best suit, navy blue, conservative, professional, and carried a leather briefcase containing copies of every document he'd ever filed at Stevens and Associates. His testimony would be supported by 15 years of meticulous records. Inside the courthouse, Derek got his first look at Bernard Stevens in months. The man had aged dramatically. His hair had gone completely gray, he'd lost significant weight, and his expensive suit couldn't hide the defeated slump of his shoulders. Bernard's eyes found Derek across the courtroom, and for a moment, pure hatred flashed between them. Wilson Stevens sat in a gallery with his parents, looking young and nervous. Since joining Harvey and Associates, Wilson had proven himself to be a dedicated employee and valuable team member. The experience of nearly facing federal prosecution had transformed him from an entitled young man into someone who understood the value of honest work. The federal prosecutor, Amanda Todd, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a reputation for thorough preparation and aggressive cross-examination. During their pre-trial meetings, she'd been impressed by Derek's documentation and his ability to explain complex financial arrangements in clear, understandable terms. Mr. Harvey, she'd told him, your testimony will make or break this case. Stevens' defense team is going to try to paint you as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. We need the jury to see you as someone who tried repeatedly to prevent these crimes. Bernard's defense attorney, Jared Morse, was equally formidable, expensive, experienced, and known for aggressive tactics that put prosecution witnesses on trial instead of his clients. Derek had been warned to expect personal attacks on his character, motives, and credibility. The trial's opening statements set the tone. Prosecutor Todd laid out a systematic pattern of money laundering, fraud, and racketeering that had operated for years under Bernard Stevens' direction. She described how legitimate construction projects had been used to launder drug money, how federal contracts had been manipulated through fraud, and how Bernard had attempted to frame Derek Harvey as a scapegoat when the investigation closed in. Defense attorney Morse presented a different narrative. Bernard Stevens was a successful businessman who'd been betrayed by a vindictive employee. Derek Harvey had orchestrated the entire scandal to destroy his former boss after being fired for poor performance. The alleged crimes were either misunderstandings or the result of unauthorized actions by subordinates, including Derek himself. Derek's testimony began on the third day of the trial. Prosecutor Todd walked him through his background: military service, engineering education, 15 years of employment at Stevens and Associates, his role in preventing previous regulatory problems. Mr. Harvey, did you ever observe activities at Stevens and Associates that concerned you? Todd asked. Yes. Beginning approximately 3 years ago, I noticed irregularities in our bidding processes, unusual subcontractor relationships, and financial arrangements that didn't seem consistent with legitimate business practices. What did you do about these concerns? Derek pulled out a thick folder. I documented everything and reported my concerns to Mr. Stevens multiple times. These are copies of memos, emails, and formal reports I filed between 2022 and 2024. Todd introduced the documents as evidence, and Derek spent the next 2 hours explaining specific instances where he'd identified problems and recommended corrective action. In each case, Bernard had overruled his recommendations or told him to focus on project management rather than regulatory compliance. Mr. Harvey, why do you think Mr. Stevens consistently ignored your warnings? Objection. Defense attorney Morse interrupted. Calls for speculation. I'll rephrase, Todd said. Based on your observations, what was the pattern of Mr. Stevens' responses to your compliance concerns? He consistently prioritized short-term profits over legal compliance. When I warned about potential regulatory problems, he would dismiss them as unlikely or tell me that he would handle the political side of any issues that arose. Derek's testimony continued for 2 full days, with Prosecutor Todd methodically establishing how Derek had tried to prevent the very crimes Bernard was accused of committing. The documentation Derek provided painted a clear picture of someone trying to maintain ethical standards within an increasingly corrupt organization. Defense attorney Morse's cross-examination was brutal but predictable. He attacked Derek's motives, suggesting revenge for being fired. He questioned Derek's competence, implying that failures to prevent the crime showed either complicity or incompetence. He even suggested that Derek had forged some of the documents he'd presented as evidence. "Mr. Harvey, isn't it true that you were terminated from Stevens and Associates for poor performance?" Morse asked. "I was terminated for taking a day off to care for my sick daughter," Derek replied calmly. "According to your former employer, you were terminated for insubordination and failure to meet professional standards. My professional standards included refusing to approve activities I believed were illegal or unethical. If that constitutes insubordination, then yes, I was insubordinate." Morse pressed harder. "You claim to have reported concerns to Mr. Stevens, but isn't it true that you never actually tried to stop any of the activities you now claim were criminal?" Derek had been prepared for this question. "I reported my concerns through proper channels and documented my recommendations. When Mr. Stevens overruled my recommendations, I continued to document the problems and maintain records that would protect the company if regulatory issues arose." "So you participated in activities you claim were illegal?" "I performed my job duties as directed while maintaining detailed records of my concerns and recommendations. The alternative was to resign, which would have eliminated any possibility of documenting these activities or providing evidence to investigators." Morse's cross-examination continued for hours, but Derek's answers remained consistent and calm. His military training had taught him to stick to facts under pressure, and his documentation supported every claim he made. The trial's most dramatic moment came when Wilson Stevens testified for the prosecution. The young man described how his uncle had placed him in a position he wasn't qualified for, had him sign documents he didn't understand, and had explicitly told him to ignore any concerns raised by Derek Harvey. "My uncle told me that Derek was old school and didn't understand modern business practices," Wilson testified. "He said Derek was paranoid about regulations and that I shouldn't worry about his warnings." Bernard Stevens' face flushed red as his nephew described conversations that clearly established criminal intent and a deliberate effort to circumvent Derek's oversight. The prosecution's case concluded with testimony from federal investigators detailing the scope of the money laundering operation, the connections to organized crime figures, and the systematic nature of the fraud. Agent Cole testified that Derek's documentation had been crucial in understanding the criminal enterprise and identifying all participants. Bernard Stevens did not testify in his own defense, a decision that surprised many observers. His defense relied entirely on attacking the credibility of prosecution witnesses and arguing that any illegal activities were the unauthorized actions of subordinates. Closing arguments were passionate on both sides. Prosecutor Todd painted Bernard Stevens as a calculating criminal who had corrupted a legitimate business for personal gain while attempting to frame an honest employee. Defense attorney Morse portrayed Bernard as a successful businessman destroyed by a vengeful former employee's false accusations. The jury deliberated for 2 days before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts: racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, fraud, and document forgery. Bernard Stevens showed no emotion as the verdicts were read, but his wife broke down, crying in the gallery. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 months later, with Bernard facing a potential life sentence under federal guidelines. Outside the courthouse, Derek was surrounded by reporters asking for his reaction to the verdicts. "I'm satisfied that justice has been served," Derek said simply. This case was never about revenge. It was about accountability and the importance of maintaining integrity in business. "What's next for you, Mr. Harvey?" asked a reporter from the Business Journal. Derek smiled slightly. "I'm building a construction company based on the principles that got me into this situation in the first place: integrity, competence, and putting family first." As Derek walked to his truck, he felt the weight of the past year lifting from his shoulders. The trial was over, justice had been served, and his new life could finally begin without the shadow of Bernard Stevens hanging over it. The war was won, but the real victory was just beginning. Chapter 8: Empire Building. 6 months after Bernard Stevens' conviction, Derek stood in the conference room of Harvey and Associates' new headquarters, a renovated warehouse in the industrial district that housed their expanded operations. The walls displayed photographs of completed projects, office buildings, school renovations, municipal facilities, and retail developments. What started as a 3-person operation in Derek's garage had grown to 45 employees and a backlog of contracts extending into the next year. The morning meeting included department heads Derek had hired as the company grew. Stacy Lim, a former municipal engineer who headed their regulatory compliance department. Josh Randall, a project manager poached from a competitor who brought relationships with major clients. And Terrence Doherty, a financial controller with 20 years of experience in construction accounting. Revenue projections for this quarter? Derek asked. Terrence consulted his tablet. We're tracking 20% above budget, with profit margins holding steady at 18%. The reputation for quality and reliability is allowing us to maintain premium pricing. Derek nodded, satisfied but not surprised. Harvey & Associates had built their business model on a simple premise. Do excellent work, finish on time, maintain absolute integrity, and charge accordingly. Clients were willing to pay premium rates for contractors they could trust. Any compliance issues? Derek asked Stacy. Clean across all projects. 3 surprise inspections last month, all passed without issues. The city inspector told Josh that our safety standards are the highest he's seen in 15 years. Derek's phone buzzed with a text from Wilson Lester. Major opportunity. Can you meet at 2 p.m.? Personnel updates? Derek asked Josh. Wilson Stevens is requesting a promotion to assistant project manager. He's completed his construction management certification, and his supervisors consistently rate his work as excellent. Derek considered this carefully. Wilson had proved himself over the past 18 months, transforming from an entitled college graduate into a competent construction professional. More importantly, his testimony against his uncle had shown moral courage that Derek respected. Promote him, but with conditions. He reports directly to you, and any major decisions require your approval. I want him to succeed, but he needs to earn additional responsibility gradually. The afternoon meeting with Wilson Lester took place at a downtown restaurant where the businessman had reserved a private dining room. Derek arrived to find Wilson already there with 2 other men. Sean Platt, a real estate developer Derek recognized from newspaper articles, and Mario Benson, whose name Derek couldn't place, but whose expensive suit and confident demeanor suggested significant wealth. Derek, I want you to meet some potential partners, Wilson began. Sean develops commercial properties across 3 states, and Mario has connections with institutional investors looking for construction industry opportunities. Sean Platt was a tall, lean man with prematurely gray hair and the focused intensity of someone accustomed to large-scale deals. Mr. Harvey, your reputation in the industry has reached our attention. We're looking for construction partners who can handle major commercial developments while maintaining the highest quality standards. What kind of projects are you considering? Derek asked. Mixed-use developments, office complexes, retail centers. Projects in the $20 to $50 million range that require construction companies with significant bonding capacity and proven track records. Derek was intrigued but cautious. Harvey & Associates had grown rapidly, but they were still a mid-sized company. Projects of the scale Sean was describing would require substantial expansion and significant risk. Mario Benson leaned forward. Mr. Harvey, I represent a consortium of investors who've been following your company's development. We're prepared to provide the capital necessary to expand Harvey & Associates into major commercial construction. What would that involve? Significant capital investment, expanded bonding capacity, additional equipment and personnel, and access to project financing that would allow you to bid on the largest commercial developments in the region. Wilson Lester smiled. Derek, this is the opportunity to build Harvey & Associates into one of the dominant construction companies in the Southeast. The reputation you've built for integrity and quality would be the foundation for major growth. Derek listened to their presentations for the next 2 hours, asking detailed questions about financing terms, control structures, and growth projections. The opportunity was attractive, but it represented a fundamental change in Harvey & Associates' character. Gentlemen, I appreciate your interest and the potential you're describing, but I need to understand something. Why Harvey and Associates? There are larger, more established construction companies you could partner with. Sean Platt answered immediately. Because after the Stevens case, your name is synonymous with integrity in this industry. Developers and investors want to work with construction companies they can trust completely. In an industry where corruption scandals are common, you represent something rare. Derek understood. His reputation as the whistleblower who'd brought down Bernard Stevens had become valuable beyond his technical expertise. Clients wanted to work with Harvey and Associates because they knew Derek Harvey would never compromise ethical standards for financial gain. I'll need to review any proposals with my attorney and accountant, Derek said, but I'm interested in hearing more specific terms. Mario Benson slid a folder across the table. Preliminary terms are outlined here. We're talking about expanding your operation to handle $200 million in annual revenue within 3 years while maintaining your controlling interest in the company. Derek drove home that evening thinking about the transformation his life had undergone. 18 months ago, he'd been a mid-level employee fired for caring for his daughter. Now, he was being courted by major investors who saw his company as the foundation for a construction empire. At home, he found Kendra in the kitchen preparing dinner while Emma worked on homework at the kitchen table. The domestic scene reminded Derek of what truly mattered, the family values that had started this entire journey. How was your meeting? Kendra asked. Derek described the partnership proposal while helping Emma with her math homework. Kendra listened without interruption, her nursing background having taught her to absorb complex information before offering opinions. What do you think? Derek asked when he finished explaining. I think you've built something remarkable based on principles that matter to you. The question is whether expanding maintains those principles or compromises them. Emma looked up from her homework. Daddy, what's a construction empire? Derek smiled at his daughter's question. It's when someone builds a very big company that constructs lots of buildings and employs many people. Would you still be able to take me to school if you have an empire? The question cut to the heart of Derek's concerns. That's a very good question, Princess. The most important thing is making sure I can always be there when you need me. That evening, after Emma was in bed, Derek and Kendra sat at their kitchen table reviewing the partnership proposal. The financial terms were generous, the growth potential was substantial, and the market opportunity was clearly significant. What does your instinct tell you? Kendra asked. Derek considered the question carefully. My instinct tells me this is the right opportunity at the right time, but only if we can structure it to maintain control over company culture and values. Then we negotiate from strength and make sure any partnership reflects what Harvey and Associates stands for. Derek looked around their kitchen, remembering the morning 18 months ago when he'd been fired for putting family first. That decision had led to the destruction of Bernard Stevens and the creation of Harvey and Associates. Now, those same values were the foundation for unprecedented opportunity. The next morning, Derek called Isaac Zhang to begin structuring negotiations that would transform Harvey and Associates from a regional construction company into a major commercial development partner, while maintaining the integrity that made it valuable. The empire Bernard Stevens had tried to destroy was about to become larger and more successful than Stevens and Associates had ever been. Chapter 9, Legacy. 1 year later, Derek Harvey stood on the observation deck of the newest Harvey and Associates project, a 30-story mixed-use development in the heart of downtown that would serve as the company's new headquarters. The building represented more than just another successful project. It symbolized the complete transformation of Derek's life and the vindication of the principles he'd refused to compromise. The partnership with Sean Platt and Mario Benson had proven highly successful. Harvey and Associates now employed over 200 people, maintained offices in 4 states, and had projects under development worth more than $300 million. More importantly, the company had maintained its reputation for absolute integrity and quality workmanship. Derek's phone buzzed with a text from Isaac Zhang. Stevens' sentencing hearing scheduled for next Tuesday. Federal prosecutor wants your impact statement. Bernard Stevens had spent the past 2 years fighting his conviction through appeals and motions, all unsuccessful. His final sentencing hearing would bring closure to a legal process that had consumed enormous resources and generated significant media attention. Wilson Stevens appeared on the observation deck, carrying project reports Derek had requested. The young man had developed into one of Harvey and Associates' most capable project managers, earning respect through competence rather than family connections. Mr. Harvey, the Morrison Tower project is ahead of schedule and under budget, Wilson reported. Final inspections are scheduled for next month. Derek accepted the reports, still amazed by Wilson's transformation. How are you feeling about your uncle's sentencing hearing? Wilson's expression grew serious, relieved that it's finally ending. Uncle Bernard made his choices, and now he has to face the consequences. I'm grateful you gave me the opportunity to make different choices. The sentencing hearing took place in the same federal courthouse where Derek had testified 2 years earlier. The courtroom was crowded with reporters, former Stevens and Associates employees, and federal agents who had worked the case. Bernard Stevens looked older and smaller than Derek remembered. Prison had not been kind to him. He'd lost significant weight, his hair had gone completely white, and his expensive suits had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit. Federal Judge Eleanor Olson, known for stern sentencing in white-collar crime cases, reviewed the case details before addressing Bernard directly. Mr. Stevens, you operated a sophisticated criminal enterprise that laundered millions in drug money, defrauded federal agencies, and attempted to frame an honest employee for your crimes. Your actions damaged the construction industry's reputation and betrayed the trust of clients and employees. Derek was called to provide his victim impact statement. Standing at the podium, facing the man who had tried to destroy his career and family, Derek felt no anger, only satisfaction that justice was finally being served. Your Honor, Bernard Stevens' crimes went beyond financial fraud. He created a workplace culture where integrity was discouraged and corruption was rewarded. He attempted to use my reputation and documentation to shield his criminal activities, and when that failed, he tried to frame me as a scapegoat. Derek paused, looking directly at Bernard. But his greatest crime was teaching young employees like his nephew that success comes from corruption rather than competence. The damage to individuals and industry standards extends far beyond the financial losses. Judge Olson sentenced Bernard Stevens to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole before serving 20 years. Additional restitution orders would strip him of virtually all remaining assets. Outside the courthouse, Derek was approached by reporters seeking his reaction to the sentence. Justice has been served, Derek said simply. Mr. Stevens chose to build his success on corruption and fraud. Today's sentence demonstrates that those choices have consequences. Mr. Harvey, how does it feel to see the man who fired you sentenced to decades in prison? Asked a reporter from the Business Journal. Derek considered the question carefully. I don't take pleasure in anyone's downfall, but I'm satisfied that the justice system worked and that other potential criminals will see that integrity matters more than short-term profits. That evening, Harvey and Associates held its annual company meeting in the conference room of their new headquarters. Derek addressed the entire staff, including original employees like Mike Bird and recent hires who joined the company's rapid expansion. When I started this company, my goal was simple: prove that businesses built on integrity and competence could succeed better than those built on corruption and shortcuts, Derek told the assembled employees. All of you have made that vision a reality. The company's success metrics were impressive. 0 safety violations across all projects, 100% on-time completion rate, client satisfaction scores above 95%, and profit margins that allowed for competitive salaries and comprehensive benefits. But our real success isn't measured in dollars or projects, Derek continued. It's measured by the culture we've built. One where doing the right thing is always the priority, where family comes first, and where every employee can be proud of their work. After the meeting, Derek drove to Emma's school to pick her up from soccer practice. Now 10 years old, Emma had followed the Stevens case with the intense interest of someone who understood her father's role in bringing down the bad man who had tried to hurt their family. Daddy, did the judge put the bad man in jail for a long time? Emma asked as they drove home. Yes, princess. For a very long time. Good. He was mean to you and tried to get you in trouble for taking care of me when I was sick. Derek smiled at his daughter's clear sense of justice. That's right. But because we did the right thing, even when it was hard, everything worked out okay. And now you have a big company that builds important buildings? That's right. And someday, if you want to, maybe you can help run the company too. Emma considered this seriously. I think I'd like that. But first, I want to be a doctor like Dr. Martinez, so I can help sick kids feel better. At home, Derek found Kendra in their living room reading a medical journal. She'd recently completed her nurse practitioner degree and was considering opening her own clinic specializing in pediatric care. How did the sentencing go? She asked. 25 years. Bernard Stevens will be in his 80s before he's eligible for parole. Kendra nodded with satisfaction. Good. And how do you feel about it finally being over? Derek sat beside his wife, looking around their home. Comfortable but not ostentatious, furnished with quality pieces chosen for durability rather than display. The values that had guided their decisions throughout the Stevens crisis continue to shape their choices now. I feel like we've completed something important, Derek said. Not just bringing down Bernard Stevens, but proving that the principles we believe in actually work. What's next? Derek pulled out his phone and showed Kendra a message he'd received that afternoon from the Small Business Administration. They want me to speak at a national conference about ethical business practices and whistleblower protection. You become quite the public speaker. I've become someone who understands that silence enables corruption. If sharing our story helps other people make better choices, then it's worth the public attention. Later that night, Derek stood on the back porch of their home, looking up at the stars. The same stars he'd looked at 18 months ago when he'd made the phone call that changed everything. The decision to expose Bernard Stevens had cost Derek his job, but given him something more valuable. Proof that integrity wasn't just idealistic, but practical. Harvey and Associates would continue growing, expanding into new markets and larger projects. But the foundation would always remain the same. Family first, integrity second. Everything else would fall into place after that. Derek's phone buzzed with one final message of the day. Wilson Lester was forwarding congratulations from clients, competitors, and industry organizations celebrating the conclusion of the Stevens case and praising Harvey and Associates' success. But the message Derek appreciated most came from Mike Bird, now Harvey and Associates Director of Safety and Compliance. Mr. Harvey, thank you for showing all of us that doing the right thing really does matter. The industry is better because of what you did. Derek Harvey had started as a construction manager who refused to compromise his principles.